Revolution. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. The main focus of the presentation, if we can move to the next slide. So I'm going to be talking about these 5 main issues. I'm going to do a very quick overview of the development from the first until the 4th Industrial Revolution, just giving you a sense of where we started and where we are now. It's actually quite quick. And then look at specifically the impact of these disruptive technologies, because that's what people are writing about the 4th Industrial Revolution. It's not the fact that it's technology, it's the disruption of the technology. And throughout the presentation, you'll get some sense of what is meant by this disruption of the technology. You'll also see quite a lot of authors talk about Industry 4.0. So if you see that concept, then you also know they're talking about the 4th Industrial Revolution. And then we're going to talk quite a lot about the future world of work, the changes in the nature of work, our whole understanding of what it is to work, jobs, occupations, and of course that has very serious implications for skills development. Then the key issue is, what are the skills that we all, you and I, will need to survive and thrive in this new work environment? Because if the environment is changing so dramatically, then clearly we need different skills to be able to cope. And then the question for us, and very much especially for us in the skills development community, is what do we need to do differently? I'm sure you'll gather throughout the presentation that one of the main themes that I talk about is the fact that the post-school education and training system, as it is at the moment, really is not ready to prepare the workforce for 2030. And you know, when we look at 2030, it sounds like a long way ago, but think it's less than 12 years from now. Most of you sitting in the room, wherever you're sitting, and myself, will actually be living and working in this work environment. So it actually is going to affect us very dramatically. I'm going to show quite a lot of videos. I have a presentation, a document that gives far more detail than what I'm doing in the presentation. It is uploaded on my website, www.learningroadmap.co.za. To repeat again, if you want to write, it's www.learningroadmap.co.za. And I checked this morning, it is uploaded under, you'll see under downloads, there's a whole section for 4th Industrial Revolution. So there you'll see a longer document on the presentation. And at the end of the document, there's a list of all the videos that I'm showing, plus the main resources that I've been using. So you're welcome then to go and check these videos and show them in your organization if you need to. So the first video that we're going to go to is this quick overview of how we got from the 1st to the 4th Industrial Revolution, and Kate will take us through that video. Thank you, Kate. Now, if you look at this picture in front of you, these are examples of how this disruptive technology is impacting on the world of work. If you look at Uber, Uber in essence is the world's largest taxi company, but it doesn't actually own any taxis. Airbnb, where you can rent accommodation, they're the world's largest provider of accommodation, but they don't have any real estate. Apparently at the moment they have the largest income from accommodation bookings, bigger than any other hotel in the entire world. Facebook, we all know Facebook. It's a media owner, but it doesn't create any content. So all of these examples are examples of how specific industries have been fundamentally changed through the disruptive technologies. In other words, the industry will never be the same again. Renting accommodation will never be the same again as a result of the disruptive technology. People often ask me, what is the problem, because we've always had technology? The difference here is what they call the disruptive technology. The fact that when you introduce technology such as Uber or Facebook or driverless cars, it actually changes the entire industry and the way organizations function, as well as, of course, what makes industries competitive. So we're going to look a bit at the future of jobs in the workplace. And the picture that you have there of a man shaking hands with a robot is an example, again, of the disruptive technology. Apparently now in Dubai airport, about 25% of the police who normally monitor in the airport have been replaced by robots. So this is the first example that I'm going to discuss, is how it affects work. I've started saying that, you know, we've got COSATU and all the trade unions striking against job losses. We even had the Democratic Alliance striking against job losses. And I always say, striking against job losses is just as valuable as striking because the sun is coming up tomorrow morning. Because job losses are an absolute reality of this new world of work, and we need to prepare ourselves for how are we going to cope with this massive job losses in our society. Now, what happens here with this Robocop, that it's connected to the police station, it's connected to internet, it can do voice recognition, it can do eye recognition, so it's actually far more effective as a policeman patrolling the airport than a human policeman. And of course, the other benefit is they don't strike, they don't take sick leave, they can work 24 hours a day. So again, an example of how this disruptive technology is impacting on the world of work. So we're going to watch the next video that actually shows more examples of how this industrial revolution is impacting on the future of jobs.
Well, gut instinct by a machine, I don't know if I like that. But as clearly evidenced by drastic developments in AI, change is underway. A perfect storm of business model change in all industries, resulting in major disruptions to labor markets. That is what's expected in the near future, according to the World Economic Forum's report on the future of jobs. Now, how so, and what needs to be done to better prepare ourselves for this rapid change? Our news feature tonight with Kwon Jang-ho.
Siri, remind me to pick up my dry cleaning after work today.
Okay, I'll remind you.
Siri is a useful tool, but it's not really ready to replace the role of a human personal assistant just yet. But that is where the technology is heading. At the World Economic Forum in Davos last week, Stuart Russell, a leading expert in computer science, suggested that in the future, artificial intelligence will become the ideal personal assistant, perform better than humans, and be available to all.
We're talking about a system which is there on your shoulder and can provide advice and help you navigate the complicated world.
But perhaps that future is already here. A study last year found that between 2001 and 2013, personal assistant jobs in the UK had fallen by 45%. Other occupations such as library assistants and travel agents also saw huge declines. The report concluded that the losses were mainly among jobs where productivity had been greatly improved by technology.
Jobs which are standardized, repetitive, and involve patterns are jobs that will be taken over by artificial intelligence and robots. For instance, in the U.S., 75% of Wall Street trading is being made by computers. Even in journalism, sports, and finance, news reports can be produced by AI autonomously.
Researchers at the University of Oxford in 2013 said that 47% of jobs in the US could potentially be done solely by machines within 10 to 20 years. The study also said that any job that involves a little social intelligence, creativity, and perception is at risk. Further studies showed that Korea is especially at higher risk of losing jobs, as it has been estimated that 63% of the country's workforce could be computerized.
Our research found that it's a very risky situation, far more so than that in the U.S. and other developed countries. The reason is because the ratio of Korean jobs that involve simple manual skills or office administration work is higher than other places.
But the research paper offers hope in that new fields will open up, especially in IT and software development. The social business networking website LinkedIn put together a list of the top 10 job titles that barely existed before 2008. 8 out of 10 were from digital industries, with iOS and Android software developers coming out on top. Academics and business leaders agree that the changing nature of the job market in general cannot be stopped, and that the next task in hand is for society to adapt to such changes.
Those already working will need to go through a re-education. Moreover, they need to study new fields in order to survive. And for that, universities and the government need to provide related courses or financial support.
And retraining is responsibility for the corporation. If we know the future, and I think we're almost crystal clear that we know the future, that's what we're talking about, that we have to start to retrain the people. And also we have to work with the government to really create the future talent to be more adapted to the future trend.
The fourth industrial revolution is coming. It should make our lives easier, better, and more productive. But for some of us, it might not happen if our jobs and livelihoods become collateral damage. To prepare for it, more steps need to be taken by governments, businesses, and of course, ourselves. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Okay, so some of the themes that came out from the video are the major disruptions in labor markets in all industries. The more I read about the fourth industrial revolution, the more I realize that there actually isn't a single industry that is not going to be affected by the fourth industrial revolution. So there are job losses in all areas, especially where productivity can be greatly improved through technology. And especially standardized jobs, repetitive jobs that involve patterns, because the moment you have those standardized pattern jobs, it's very easy to program them either for a computer or a robot or some other technology to actually be able to do that function far more effectively. It was interesting, I did a presentation for people in the financial sector, and they said, no, but in our sector, we are not going to be affected because, you know, accountants and economists and financial advisors will also be needed. And then there was this example of 75% of the trading on the New York Stock Exchange is actually done through algorithms, through computers. It's not done through human beings, whereas we would assume that those kind of high-level jobs would actually still be done by human beings. It was also interesting, quite recently, I saw a comment by the CEO of the South African JSE, which is, by the way, a woman. Isn't that nice to see? And the JSE is automating processes so that it can remain competitive. And she said it will result in job losses. Now, one could say that the JSE should, in the interest of South African economy and jobs, should retain jobs. But if she does that, then the JSE will not be able to function effectively in the international stock exchange market. So she has no option but to bring in more technology. Then the video talks about 65% of the workforce in Korea and other development countries could be computerized, because the video obviously talks about Korea. But what he says about Korea is just as relevant for South Africa, because we are also a developing country. They also talk, quite a lot of these videos and the writing about the fourth industrial revolution talks about many new jobs that will be created. So many of the people who are very positive about the fourth industrial revolution talk about all these new jobs, but we must remember that these new jobs are going to be in digital industries, and these require highly specialized skills that are actually not being trained on a large scale in South Africa. And of course, what is quite obvious is that we are all going to need, you and I and all of us listening, and those who are not listening, re-education is going to be critical for those who are already working, so that we can acquire the skills in the new fields if we actually want to survive in the new world of work. Because we do have to realize that a lot of the skills that we have that enable us to function in this economy, which is largely a third industrial world economy, and in many sectors, if you look at the rural areas of KZN, the rural areas of Limpopo, Northern Cape, a lot of the rural areas outside the cities, a lot of those economies are actually second industrial or third industrial. They haven't even moved towards the fourth industrial economy. So it is very obvious that skills, reskilling is going to be incredibly important if we want to survive in the new world of work. This I found was quite shocking. If you look at the Global Competitive Index, you see South Africa is 61, actually down from number 47 in 2016. So we're not going up, we're going down. And it's also interesting to see countries like Rwanda, Mauritius, India are actually above us. So it's not only the highly developed countries that are doing well in terms of global competitiveness. So when you think about the fourth industrial revolution, you have to look at it within the context of global competitiveness, because you cannot maintain an economy in this third industrial revolution if the world economy is in the fourth industrial revolution. So we are going to have to find ways to upskill ourselves and with the right skills so that we can move up in the world competitiveness ratings. This was actually a wonderful financial mail that came out with a shocking title. And yes, it is true. Robots are coming from my job. They're coming from your job. So what are we going to do as people who are working in skills development, human resource development? What are we going to do with the people whose jobs have been taken over by robots? There's a very interesting book that a lot of people are reading now. It's called Homo Deus, and it actually talks about, it's written as a history of the future, not as the history of the past. And he uses the very disturbing term, he talks about the useless ones, which actually doesn't sound very nice to us because we are in a developmental state. But what he's saying is that a large majority of the people within society will simply not have any skills that will enable them to interact in any meaningful way in the new economy. Here is another example. Now, this is what everybody's talking about, 3D printing. This bridge is actually a bridge built in Holland. There's no concrete, there were no human hands. It was all done through robotic arms and lasers. So the question is, how is the fourth industrial revolution going to impact on the construction industry that is heavily dependent on manual labor? A friend of mine often says, you know, in future we're not going to need to go to the hardware shop to get a new screwdriver. You'll have a 3D printer on your table like you have an ordinary printer now. You'll simply print the exact screwdriver that you need. Afterwards, I don't know what you do, whether you recycle it, I'm not quite sure how the 3D printers work. But 3D printers on their own are going to have a massive impact. I mean, we already know that in the medical world, 3D printers are used to create artificial legs, to create components of your body that they insert. So again, massive impact on all industries. Now, some people think that this only happens internationally in Silicon Valley or Santon. But while I was doing one of these presentations, somebody gave me an example where they said in Ermelo, there's a pig farmer. He's actually not that pig farmer, but I just thought this is a pretty picture. But there's a pig farmer in Ermelo who used to get in the vet every single day to come and check the temperature of the pigs, because as in humans, temperature of pigs is a very important indication of the health of the pigs. So she used to come in every morning, take the temperature of every pig. If there was a pig that had a problem, she would treat that pig. That farmer has now replaced the vet with a drone or a few drones. So what the drones do, because he exports, he's a large pig farmer. So the drones hover over the pig's area and only picks up those pigs where there is a problem with their temperature. If needed, he calls the vet. If not needed, he doesn't even call the vet. So again, an example of another industry that is affected by technology. He no longer uses security guards around his perimeters. He's got drones that monitor the things 24 hours a day. Again, they don't strike, they don't need to be fed, they don't go on holiday, they don't fall asleep on the job. So actually, he's running his farm, even in Ermelo, which is pretty much a small town in South Africa, and using technology not only to improve his productivity, but also in the process reducing the number of people that he needs to actually run his farm productively. So when you watch these videos, and by the way, I will make available for you a document that gives the whole text of the presentation, but with even more, and all the links, the URLs to all these videos, so that you can actually watch them afterwards and use them in your own organizations. And in the document, you will also have references to the major resources that I found most useful about the Fourth Industrial Revolution. As I said earlier, you get a lot of positive spin on this. You know how it's going to change our world dramatically and wonderfully, but at the same time, also serious concerns. And as we progress with the presentation, I'm going to raise more and more concerns about this. So let's look at the next video, in which we're going to look at the 5 trends that are shaping the future world of work. So you will see very clearly from these trends how they affect the world of work, the nature of jobs, the way we are going to actually view work in the future. And it actually tells us that we really need to rethink completely how we understand work, the concept of work. What is a job? What is it to work? What is an occupation? And this video will give us some insight into that. So let's have a look at the video.
There is something going on in the world of work today. Some kind of a evolution that's forcing organizations to think differently about what it means to be an employee or a manager, and even what it means to actually work. There are 5 trends that are causing this evolution to happen. 5 trends that are forcing organizations to challenge everything they know about work. These 5 trends are globalization, mobility, millennials and changing demographics, new behaviors, and technology. Globalization is causing the world to become like one giant city. The language that you speak, the culture that you subscribe to, the currency that you transact in, and where you are physically located are all starting to matter much less. This means that organizations can tap into talent anywhere in the world. Mobility is allowing us to stay connected to people and information anytime, anywhere, and on any device. This means that work is no longer a place you go to, it's something that you carry with you in your pocket wherever you are. Millennials are expected to comprise 50% of the workforce by 2020 and 75% of the workforce by 2025. Millennials are digital natives that expect and want to work in ways that reflect the year we live in. Most people live in 2015, but work at companies that operate like they are in 1975. although millennials are driving enormous organizational change, it's important to remember that the future employee is anyone that is changing their behavior and mindset to adapt to the changing workforce. This means it doesn't matter if that person is 22 or 62. New behaviors are rapidly entering our organizations. For example, we are all comfortable living a more public life. We share our thoughts in blogs, post reviews on Yelp, have our entire professional history on LinkedIn, share pictures on Instagram, rant on Twitter, and engage in open conversations on Facebook. In fact, virtually every aspect of business behavior has changed, including the way we share, communicate, collaborate, teach, learn, find information, access technology, and create content. This is forcing organizations to fundamentally rethink and reimagine the way we work. Technologies such as big data, wearable devices, collaboration platforms, the Internet of Things, and cloud computing are enabling us to work in new ways while keeping us more engaged and productive. In the future of work, technology is the central nervous system of the organization that enables everything else to function. Together, these 5 trends, combined with an unprecedented war for talent, is forcing organizations to shift their mentality from creating a place where they assume employees need to work there to creating an environment where employees want to work there. When we think about the future of work, the organizations that can most effectively make this shift from need to want are the ones who will be able to attract and retain top talent. This means that if your organization doesn't think about and plan for the future of work, then your organization will have no future.
Let's look at some of the predictions about this 2020 workplace. Many of these articles and videos about the fourth industrial revolution are all projecting towards 2030. Now, 2030 sounds a long way away, but you realize it's not even 12 years from now. So most of us who are still working will actually be working in this new world of work. So it's not like we're talking about 50 years ahead of the time. Many of the videos and writing actually stresses the fact that we are already in the fourth industrial revolution, and maybe some of you that are working in highly specialized and digital industries are actually already working in the fourth industrial environment. So these are some of the scary predictions about this new world of work. So for you who have small children, 65% of the children starting school this year will enter jobs that don't exist yet. They're not there. We don't have those. We don't know what those jobs are. And 65% of the children who are in school, including like my grandson who's in high school, will have 14 different jobs before they turn 40. So immediately, as skills development practitioners, we have to think, how do you prepare people to be able to function effectively in 14 different jobs? Now, the World Bank did a study, and these are the percentages that they said of jobs at risk from automation. You'll see South Africa, 67% of our jobs there's a high risk of job losses due to automation. 65% of the workforce of Korea and other developing countries could be computerized. So, of course, many new jobs will be created, but in digital industries that require highly specialized skills. And again, emphasizing the point that re-education is incredibly important for those who are already working. You know, Toffler, quite a few years ago, he said, the future, what did he say? The illiterate of the future, he said, will not be those who cannot read. It will be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So what he says is that we have to actually unlearn what we know and relearn new things so that we can be able to effective in the new world environment. So I came across recently of this video that I think is very important because it talks about the tsunami that is resulting from the fourth industrial revolution. In other words, having a very realistic, hard look at the negative impact of the fourth industrial revolution. So let's have a look at that video.
In the chill of Davos, Switzerland this year, World Economic Forum participants are concerned about innovating responsibly. Research related to mastering the fourth industrial revolution warns that increasingly high-tech changes threaten to eliminate millions of people's jobs.
I'm frightened because are we going too fast? Is our changes too exponential? As an architect of this revolution, or is there any architect, that have we planned for societal changes? Have we planned for human capital enablement? Have we planned for security?
19th century steam revolutionized first transportation, then factories. Then last century digital technology overtook analog.
The World Economic Forum has described the fourth industrial revolution as a tsunami of technological advances that will transform our economy. But what of the impact on the labour market? Where will the work come from for all those people now doing jobs that will disappear as they're replaced by machines?
Policymakers are looking at worst-case scenarios of technology making people's skills obsolete, economically devaluing them.
Let's look at the scale of the problem that is in front of us. We already have 200 million people unemployed. Half the world's workforce is surviving on just a couple of dollars a day, and they're classified in the informal sector. Now, you put on top of that this digital revolution that is taking place and the impact on jobs. And all the statistics that we see alarm us.
The challenge is to ensure that new technologies benefit the greatest possible number of people so that the revolution is peaceful.
So let's look at the impact on work, occupations, and employment. Okay, so what we must already by now realize is that existing occupations will disappear and new jobs will emerge. All of us sitting in this room, 65% of our jobs might have disappeared within the next 10, 12 years. What is going to appear are hybrid jobs. In other words, jobs that integrate technical expertise with data analysis, design, problem solving, project management, and human skills. So this is what I said at one stage, is that the nature of jobs is going to change. So where we now have financial jobs and HR jobs and technical jobs, what they're saying is that there's going to be a greater merging between these specialized fields in which we're going to be working in. Of course, the end of the fixed job description. So I just have news for those people who are still writing job descriptions and who think their organization should have nice, clear job descriptions. It probably is an indication that you are functioning in the third industrial revolution, because in the fourth industrial revolution environment, it's going to be very difficult to have fixed job descriptions, because change is going to be happening all the time. There's going to be a rapid change within organizations, and it's going to be more difficult to say, this is your job. The work is going to be done far more through temporary cross-functional project teams. And I'm sure some of you, I know I'm working in that environment already, in which one is working in a project team that changes from time to time. At the moment, I'm working in a mentoring and coaching program with a consulting company from Italy, and I'm working with a guy from Uganda, because we were working on mentoring and coaching. But this project ends within 3 months. Then maybe I'm going to be working on industrial clusters with the Gauteng Department of Education, of Economic Development. So this shows you some of us are already working in these temporary cross-functional job environment. I don't have a job description. My job description is to do the next project that comes around, and for that I need very specific skills that I will bring into that project. So also there's going to be far more collaboration through virtual communication across time, space, and organizations. And many of us are already in that environment where we're working with people in Germany and Italy and across the world. We don't actually need to sit in the same room when we work with them. So this concept, this is the good news, this concept of the office as a place of work is really dying very quickly. And I challenge organizations to say, how many of your staff actually do need to come into the office every day? I mean, for people living in Gauteng, driving to work is a nightmare. You spend 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, and the same in Cape Town and many of the cities. So the question is, you need to ask your managers, do these people actually have to go into the office? Because, you know, our concept of work is that you go into a place called the office, and there you are productive. When you leave the office, you are no longer productive. And we need to change that whole concept of being productive irrespective of where you are. I'm actually far more productive when I'm sitting in my little office with my cats around me and the music playing in the background and having tea while I'm working, rather than sitting in a specific office and doing work. So what it also means that there's going to be a massive shift in employment relations. In other words, the relationship that you have to your employer. Because you are no longer going to have an employer, you are going to have different people that you work with. If you go back to the fact that people are going to have 14 different jobs before they're 40, you're not going to have one employer for your whole employment career. So it actually has important impact. For example, you won't have the people that you go to work with, you've been working with them for 10, 15 years, you have this comfortable working relationship in the office where you have coffee in the morning and you share your personal stories. That's going to go, because we're not going to have masses of people actually going to the same place to work, because you're going to all be able to sit and work in your pajamas at home. What a wonderful world. I like this concept that I came across that they call the gig economy. You know, a gig is like if you go and you play guitar and you go into the coffee shop at night and you play a gig. Or you're a comedian and you do a gig at some kind of event. And that's what they say, we are moving into the gig economy, where you are going to do flexible on-demand jobs, work. So you're going to have short-term contracts or freelance work. So you're going to get paid for the gig that you do. And if you look at Uber, Airbnb, Mr. Delivery, a lot of organizations, a lot of people are actually already working in the gig economy. So the question is, how prepared are you for a gig economy? If you are still working with an employer, what skills do you have that you will be able to go out and sell in a new economy where they need you to actually perform some kind of gig? What I often read is people who say that in future we are all going to need a basket of skills that you are going to be able to use and sell for into different kind of projects. So you're not going to, it's no longer going to be this world where you have a very definite occupation and it is your occupation that gives you a job. So I'm a marketing specialist, or I'm a project manager. You are going to have different kinds of skills that you're going to be able to use in different work contexts. So the ILO found this. So it's actually interesting because I think we tend to think that most people are actually working in kind of full-time, long-term contracts. But the ILO study already in 2015 found that fewer than 45% of people are actually employed on a full-time permanent basis. So again, showing that we are actually already in this new industrial revolution. And if I can, I mean, there are quite a few themes that I want to stress here, but the one theme that I want to stress is that don't think that the fourth industrial revolution is out there, it's not going to affect me because I'm going to carry on working in this work environment without any massive changes. So I'm going to now start coming more closer to our kind of environment of the ASDSA. And I think I found this a very interesting picture. On the left-hand side, you see the traditional kind of structure. You've got the CEO, and then you've got the directors and the deputy directors. and then the new kind of organizations where you see it's far more fluid. We no longer having these organizations that are so clearly structured. You still see them very much, the hierarchical structure in government, very much so, and in many sort of traditional organizations. But the newer organizations, many, it's a far messier world, and changing far more than the traditional one that we are used to. So we are used to the world with little man prepared to be an artisan, where we are training people for a specific occupation. And this is where I'm going to come down to our OFO and the QCTO and our skills development system. That is the system, the current system, that is designed to train people for a very specific job, a very specific occupation on the OFO. And for those who watch Friends, this is Joey in one of the comedy scenes where he put on different layers of clothes. And I actually stole this slide from somebody else at a presentation, but I think it reflects exactly what we're trying to say here, is that we need, from a skills development perspective, to move from a system in which we prepare people for a specific job to a system in which we actually dress people for different roles, so that Joey can take off some of those clothing, and when you go into a new job, you actually are dressed for that specific job. You change your clothes, in other words, your whole professional skills set for a new kind of job. And that challenges our whole post-school education system. These are the skills that are written about, that they say that we are going to need to succeed in the fourth industrial workplace, and you can see those references. So we know these kinds of skills, we know how important creativity and innovation is in all of these things, but are we actually training people in these skills? There are a few of these skills that I really find striking. This cognitive flexibility and cognitive load management, because we all know that there is such a massive amount of information out there, and we need to be trained in the skill of managing all of this information, and also cognitive flexibility, being able to be adapted to move in these different environments far more flexibly. Change resilience, technological literacy. What one reads far more often is where people say it's not understanding technology, but having the skills to be able to work productively alongside technology. You know, we have always used technology, but it's like, I use a microphone, I use a cell phone. What they're saying is that with a new technology, you're going to work alongside the technology. The technology is going to be almost the driving person, like the robot at the airport. And you're going to have to find a place working alongside technology rather than being the boss of technology. Transdisciplinarity, incredibly important. The ability to work across disciplines. And this challenges our whole notion. If you look at our universities, you have the engineering department, you've got the HR department, you've got accounting, you've got finance. Our educational system, even our CETA system, is designed along disciplines, along skilled areas, specialized areas. And what everything about the new world of work tells us is we're going to have to be able to work across these disciplines far more effectively. Okay, collaboration, I've spoken about it, and of course entrepreneurial skills are incredibly important. For those of you who are still employed, probably within 5 years, I would imagine 80% of you will no longer have a job. But we have to make the distinction between work and a job. We are not going to be able to find a new job, but you're going to have the skills that enable you to work and generate an income even if there isn't a job. And I think as a national discourse, we need to have this massive change. We must stop talking about job losses and start talking about work opportunities, and prepare people to be able to use work opportunities, use the skills that you have for different kinds of work opportunities. And of course, lifelong learning goes without saying, lifelong learning, but by lifelong learning, we are not talking about credits on the National Qualifications Framework. We are talking about learning about MOOCs. For those who haven't discovered MOOCs, yes, please go and discover the MOOCs. Massive open online courses. You can now get a master's degree in engineering from Harvard University sitting in your room in your pajamas. You don't actually have to go to a university. So even universities, the whole concept of universities, we need to challenge that in terms of the fourth industrial revolution. Okay, let's move on. Key challenges for skills development. So, challenge number one, how do you teach creativity, innovation, transdisciplinarity, and all of these skills in this kind of prescriptive and inflexible school system? I'm not going to talk about the school system because I don't specialize in that area, but we know that the school system is not actually preparing students for the current workplace, never mind for the fourth industrial revolution. So, if we are prepared to have a school system in which people can pass with 30% matric without any maths or science or technology, how do we think these pupils, learners, are going to be prepared for the new world of work? You know, together with the technology, we know there's this information overload and a massive amount of information that is generated every day. So the question is, what should we be teaching if there's too much knowledge and the knowledge we acquired is soon outdated? I find it very interesting, my grandson, because he goes to school and he studies, he comes home and he does his homework very quickly as possible, and then he lies on the couch and he starts playing on the internet. And I used to be quite irritated by that because I thought, you know, why aren't you doing more homework? Until I realized he's actually doing most of his learning, he's doing while playing on the internet in the afternoon, not actually learning what he's learned at school. So it also gives us an indication that there's something wrong with our schooling system. Okay, what skills should new entrants to the job market acquire if they don't know what jobs they'll be? Because remember I said earlier that a lot of the jobs that we're going to be working in 10 years' time haven't even been created yet. So how do you prepare people for jobs, but you don't know what jobs there will be by the time they graduate? And how in our system do you actually equip people for these skills, for these flexible career paths, moving in and out of different careers, often totally unrelated careers, and to be able to have these multiple career changes? It's an interesting example thinking about my family again. My sister-in-law has been a primary school teacher. She's now retired, but she's still teaching in a private primary school now because she cannot be employed in the public system anymore. Her entire life she's been a private school, a primary school teacher. My daughter, who is not even 40 yet, has six or seven major job changes, working in project management, change management, publishing, curriculum development, and she's not even 40 yet. So that world again is right here. And then the key question for us and for ASDSA is, what skills development strategies do we need in our organizations and nationally in our country to ensure that we remain relevant in the global economy? I'm not talking a lot about the global economy, but clearly we all know that everything that we do is that we are part of a global economy. So we cannot say our agricultural system is going to function in our own little way because we are not going to be affected by what is happening in the international markets. So I think it's very clear where I'm going to, and that is that we need to rethink our skills development system. And one of the main points of my presentation is that the HRD and the skills planning strategies for the fourth industrial revolution cannot be driven by credits on the NQF, accredited programs, QCTO qualifications, CT grants, points on the BEE scorecard. I mean, the whole system that we have is designed for the world that existed in the third industrial revolution and that is actually fast being phased out. So my concerns, that is why I'm doing this presentation, and writing all of these things on the internet and skills universe. I'm arguing my concerns is that our skills development system, we really need to have a radical rethink, not a tweaking, not a moving this through there and grouping the seaters differently and moving this to that organization. We need to sit down and do a fundamental rethink to say, how are we going to, what is the system that we need so that we can empower our people for the new world of work? So we must recognize that this system that we have is not designed to prepare the workforce for 2030. Remember, it's 12 years. So we need to redesign the system very, very quickly, otherwise we're going to miss the 2030 deadline. Because it's focused on the wrong skills, the priorities at the moment in the skills development system, and we understand why. Because we come from a certain environment in which the masses of our people do not have qualifications, they do not have skills to even enter in the workplace environment. But are we doing the right thing by empowering them with skills that they're not going to be able to use in the new workplace environment? And of course, we have qualifications in the OFO, in the QCTO system, we have qualifications that are designed for very specific occupations on the OFO. And I have very serious criticisms against that whole system, because you can understand now why. It's because the occupations, the whole concept of an occupation is going to change. It is changing already radically. So the kinds of occupations that we have at the moment are probably not going to exist in 10, 15 years' time. But we have a skills development system under the QCTO that is built on the basis of a flawed foundation. Because if you are training people for occupations that are important now, everybody is telling us that those people are not going to be able to be employed, because you are training them for very specific jobs, not for the kind of jobs that were in the hybrid jobs, the multidisciplinary jobs, to enable them to function in the new work environment. So, of course, my argument is that we are failing to prepare the workforce for 2030. That's what I see from the QCTO CETA post-school system. Here is an example. We have 5 occupational certificates for different types of footwear cutting machine operators. You can go and look. They are on the National Qualifications Framework. These are year-on-year programs, qualifications, all for machine operators operating, doing very specific things. Now, I don't understand the footwear production process, but my common sense tells me that there's something wrong with a system in 2018 in which we are developing qualifications to prepare people for the new world of work, if these are the occupations that we are designing. Because I would imagine that these are the kinds of jobs that will be quite easily performed by robots or other kinds of technology. The other example is we have different, completely separate occupational certificates for bus drivers, train drivers, truck drivers, taxi drivers. But my question is, what about if you're a taxi driver and a bus driver and a truck driver? And now will you be able to drive some kind of agricultural a machine, I can't think of the word now, a stroper, some kind of agricultural vehicle to work on the land? Will you be able to do that with this occupation? Is it really necessary for us to have separate occupations for all of these? What is actually very interesting is that the taxi driver, he only needs 72 credits. I would imagine the way taxi drivers drive and the kind of customer service they provide, they probably need 240 or 360 credits. But I think you get my point, is that under the QCTO system and at the moment the current CETA system, we are training people for very specific occupations, and that whole system is completely the opposite of what this kind of skills that are going to be needed in the newer work environment. Another one is a wonderful example. We've got an occupational certificate for a vehicle painter, automotive and marine painter, 366 credits. But if any of you have viewed any videos or if you've ever been in a factory where they are actually painting vehicles, they are actually not using people with paintbrushes. They are actually using robotic arms to paint the vehicles. Now, I accept that there might still be backyard mechanics who are going to be painting with some kind of roller, I don't know what you use, a can of spray paint to paint vehicles. But, okay, the point I'm trying to make is that if you look at the kind of qualifications that are being developed under the QCTO, you don't have to agree with me, but you probably need to question whether we are actually going in the right direction. Is this really preparing the workforce for 2030? So let's look at what people are saying. Okay, so David Rose, he has a very interesting video you can go and watch on YouTube. So he says, we are preparing students for jobs that don't exist, to use technology that hasn't been invented in order to solve problems that we don't even know are problems yet. Now, I don't have the answer, but what I do know is that the system that we do have, we need to completely rethink it, because the system is not going to work the way it is. So that's why we need a fundamental rethink. Clem Santa, who's a strategic thinker, a scenario builder, futurist, this is what he's saying. So, we are preparing students for a job market that doesn't exist. And we are going to lose out heavily if we don't fundamentally rethink the system. So, how do we prepare the workforce for the fourth industrial revolution? And I think this is, I want to go back and say, why I'm really pleased that ASDSA has given us this platform, because skills development practitioners or people who are working in the skills development environment, you're at the cutting edge of this. You are the people who should be seeing this, who should be warning your companies to say, this is what is happening. This is the new world. How are we preparing for the new world? Because my great concern, when I do attend briefings of the QCTO and the CETAs, and when I do manage to sit through the briefing without making some kind of comment, is that the audience in those kind of briefings are so focused on making notes about what is the new requirement and how do I need to do this and what form do I need to complete for this and exactly how many % am I going to give for that, that I am very disturbed, because people don't sit there, this community that actually should be preparing the workforce for the future. They are not sitting there and saying to these people in official organizations, this is not going to work. It doesn't work in our organizations because these are different needs. Because I think we really have come to the situation where the training community, the people working in skills development, are actually encouraging this compliance approach in which we say, okay, the CETA says this is what we have to do, therefore this is what we're going to do. And I find there is too little critical engagement with the system. Of course, it is happening in places, and I see that in many organizations I work in. But I'm really urging you to critically evaluate the system that we are working in, rather than just saying, this is what the CETA does and we're going to give it. Because, you know, change in South African society at the moment is happening largely because of interest groups, because of civil society. The changes in HIV/AIDS happened because civil society said enough is enough, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. A lot of the anti-corruption activities that are happening in government now have been pushed by civil society. So we as a skills development community, we have to become a force to actually drive this change. Okay, there was end of the sermon. So what do we need to do? We have to analyze the workforce readiness for the fourth industrial revolution. You need to look into your own organizations and say, who has the skills and the kind of adaptability that will enable them to go into 2030? And then what are you going to do with the others? Because if you find that 50 or 60% of your workforce is not ready for this new world, what are you going to do with them? You can't just fire all of them. How are you going to reskill them? In what kind of skills? What options are there going to be for those? You know, we often do skills audits. Sometimes we do skills audits, but we call them training needs analyses, but that's another point. But whatever way you do a skills audit, we need to do a future-focused skills audit in which we say, what skills are we going to need in 2025, 2030 and beyond? And how are we going to address that gap? Because too much of the skills audit and the training needs analysis with you is we're looking back into the organization and say, what are the skills that we don't have so that we can do what we need to do now? So we really need to change our whole focus and saying, what are the skills that we need for the future? And of course, we have to revise our current skills and training strategies. What is going to be needed to prepare people for the new world is really far more of this kind of just-in-time continuous learning and relearning. The kind of, I don't even want to call them training, because it's the kind of learning interventions that are developed on the run, that yesterday you discovered the company needs to change the process, and within 2-3 days you've got another program running. Multidisciplinary project-based learning, where you actually get a group of people into a room and you say, okay, this is the problem that we have. It's like the kind of problem-solving learning. This is the problem that we have. How are we going to solve this problem? And you're not going to be able to go on a course to teach you how to solve the problem, because the course is designed to solve a problem that already exists, not a new problem that you have to develop. So, and then of course MOOCs, massive open online courses. We are going to have to use far more informal, just-in-time learning and change the whole focus that we have at the moment. And unfortunately in South Africa at the moment, we have a mentality, a mindset, a paradigm that says it is only training that is aligned to credits that has been accredited and sequestrated and gone through the whole quality assurance process. Those are the only programs that are valuable. But if you really listen to anything that everybody is saying about the fourth industrial revolution, then it's clear that those courses are not going to take you and prepare you. I don't know what the solution is, but I do know that the solution is not to sit back and say, okay, we're going to tweak the QCTO a bit, and some of the CETA functions are going to go to the QCTO, and maybe we're going to merge some of the CETAs. That definitely is not going to help us. Professional bodies are extremely important, like the Association for Skills Development, like SABPP, organizations, the IPM, professional bodies that are working in this HRD skills development environment. And I really find that the professional bodies are not vocal enough, are not standing up and saying, we are the professional bodies, this is where our industry is going, these are the skills that we are needing, and therefore we need to change the skills development system in some way to accommodate our needs. Because it is professional bodies who should, and who probably do know. I spoke at a conference of the SACP CMP last week. That professional body, they know what the industry needs are in the construction sector. So they are the ones who should be pushing change in the skills development system. So therefore I argue, I urge you strongly, if you believe even half of what I've said, for you to actually engage with the professional bodies and assist that we bring about this kind of change, so that we can move away from this compliance approach where we say, well, this is the CETA system, this is the BEE system, because you know the BEE system, as much as I support BEE, the concept of black economic empowerment, the BEE system and the BEE scorecard is pushing a whole lot of learners through the system simply so that companies can gain benefit from BEE scorecard. Not because the kind of training that they're doing is actually relevant to the current and of course not the future. So we really need to rethink what we are doing. So we need to put pressure on the QCTO, CETAs, etc., so that they can review these policies, the grant structure, the qualification design, the whole system, the learning program matrix, the kind of thing that we are working with with every day. We really need, as a sector, to actually engage more actively. We now have a new Minister of Higher Education and Training. It was actually interesting. Okay, I'm recording this the day before we're doing this presentation. On Monday morning, we had some criticism about the Department of Education, and the minister actually phoned into SAFM and said, I would like to give my comments. So we have a new minister. We have the opportunities to actually engage and get the minister to make some fundamental changes. So I end with the last slide. So clearly what I'm trying to argue is that we have to change, we have to make sure that we put systems in place so that we can prepare for these massive changes that we are going to experience in the fourth industrial revolution. Thank you very much, and good luck with your work, whatever you're doing in the skills development environment. And I hope that you are all motivated to go and re-look at your own skill set so that you can prepare yourself for this massive disruption of the fourth industrial revolution. Thank you very much. Hi, so my microphone is on. If anybody wants to engage with me, sitting right here ready to talk. Thank you for all the positive comments, but I really think a lot of people are talking about solutions, and that's where I really think we need to create some kind of a forum in which we together engage on these issues, and then for us to find these solutions, because really to wait for the CETA and the QCTO, the kind of solutions that they're coming up with are solutions that fit within the current paradigm, within their current approach to skills development. And I think what I'm clearly arguing is that we actually need to move outside the current thinking about our skills development system and find completely new solutions to addressing these. And I'm not saying that we have to scrap everything that is in the CETA and the QCTO domain, but it might mean that we need to have a formal recognition for some kind of informal training system that runs alongside what the QCTO and the CETA is doing at the moment. Because surely some of the training and some of the qualifications, I'm not denying that some of that training is still preparing people for the workforce for now, and it might take them to the future. But I really think that we need this recognition for informal, just in time, the kind of training that will enable people to actually move forward into this new environment. And I really encourage you to go and get those videos, because it's only really when you watch those videos a few times that you get the full value out of those videos. I think even, I'm quite sure in the document I have URLs to other videos that I didn't even show because I didn't have enough time to show all the wonderful videos that are available.